bait dog. Get the fuck out of my house with this old country shit, Sylvia. I'm serious. I hear my dad say from the kitchen downstairs. I give children and idiots 3 warnings. That's your first. It takes me a second to recognize my aunt's voice. I've only met her a handful of times, and it's nearly 2 a.m. Sil, he's right, this is crazy. I'm Roma. I'm proud. But you're part of the family, and mine are 2 separate things. My mom interjects. Her voice is calm and level. I woke up about halfway through whatever is going on, and I'm fuzzy on the details, but everyone involved is 3 kinds of pissed. So you say, but just because you ignore the other side, doesn't mean the other side ignores you. Aunt Sil replies, I could never quite place her accent, but it makes her statement all the more sinister. Might as well make that the family motto. Sil, there are a couple dozen other kids Nicholas' age in the family. Half of which are already hip deep in whatever is going on nowadays. You don't need him. Mom isn't pleading, but I can hear she's worried. Why are we trying to reason with your crazy aunt? Time to go, Sil. My dad isn't worried, he's angry. That's 2. Aunt Sylvia replies. I hear a chair squeak then fall to the floor. That's 3. Sylvia says, her voice is cold, and I swear I could almost hear an echo. I can hear my dad start to quietly cough. He sounds like he's trying to talk but can't. My heart starts to race. I don't understand what's going on, but I know it's bad. Sil, Jesus Christ, that's my husband. Mom sounds more offended than scared now. I wish I could say the same. I stand next to my cracked door, fear beginning to take hold. I can hear my dad start to take long wheezing breaths. I have no idea if this is a good or bad thing. Happy? Now that any hope of doing this quietly is over, Nicholas and I have a long drive ahead of us. He's 16, he has a license, yes? I hear Sylvia say, sudden footsteps walking up the stairs. No, he's not interested in driving. You can't take him, Sil. My mom sounds frantic. Sylvia's steps are measured and heavy. Not interested? You sure we are related? You raise soft children. Sylvia ends this with a dismissive laugh. The few minutes that followed were kind of a blur, with my mom trying to convince me that I was just going to visit family, as if I didn't just hear everything. It's a couple hours into a long drive in a small car when my brain finally catches up to the fact that I'm awake and going 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. Aunt Sil sits in the driver's seat. She's 40-something, olive-skinned with pitch-colored hair. Her style, it's something. Her outfit was the middle of a Venn diagram of hippie, punk rock, and carpenter. Bracelets, flannel, paisley, and enough piercings I lost count. Any chance of putting both hands on the wheel? I say I'm mad, but I don't even really know why. She holds up her left arm, and I'm shocked. It's an ancient-looking blued steel prosthetic. She flexes the clawed, almost mitten-like hand. Go through too many steering wheels that way, she says with a smirk. What's going on? I ask, after an agonizing 15 minutes of silence. You're a big boy, so if you want the truth, I'll give it to you. There's a job that needs to be done, a dangerous job, and I want you to do it. Now, I want you not because you're strong or smart or special. We have many strong, smart, special boys. I want because you're unknown and, little one, disposable. Sylvia lets this comment hang like rotten fruit. The next hour goes in silence. At no point do I even entertain the notion this is some kind of joke. Something about this woman's energy, about the way she carries herself, it scares the shit out of me. We board a plane. Somehow she had all of my travel documents. Even stranger is that we get escorted past the security checkpoints into first class. The next words I say to Sylvia are, "You have to put that out," as she lights up a short, yellow, hand-rolled cigarette. She grins, taking a long drag. It smells horrible, the cheapest, roughest tobacco odor I've encountered. She relaxes, a cloud of thick, gray smoke forming. I'm stunned. Not a single person says anything. At first I think maybe she's some kind of, mobster or something. But that isn't quite right. No one is looking at her in fear. No one is telling anyone else not to say anything. It's like no one notices what she's doing. How does she do this? The little boy wonders. I don't come offering you a thankless task, Nick. I come with an opportunity. Sylvia says before crushing the cigarette on the arm of a chair and tossing it into the aisle. I had questions, and between the fear and the confusion I asked every one of them. The only response she gave me was, "You'll see when we get there." She was right. The flight lands, and after an hour or so of driving the world's oldest pickup through the English countryside, we wind up at an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere outside of Hammersmith. The sign outside says Grid Auctions. The letters are old, bronze, and tarnished. The grounds are littered with car parts, statues, and errata of every type. Dozens, maybe even 100 people mill about, each stopping for a moment to give a suspicious look at the interloper in their midst. Sylvia seems amused at my nervousness. I try and give the rough-looking folks around me as much space as I can. They're family, mostly by blood or marriage, with a handful of lost souls and hangers-on. She explains. I probably should have guessed, seeing my mom's family name on the sign, but my brain is basically nothing more than fear, anxiety, and jet lag at this point. When do I get to know what's going on? I say, waving at a cousin of some form, and receive a uniquely English rude gesture in return. My ear is ringing, and I stumble, the left side of my face burning. I'd say Syl slapped me, but it was more of a polite punch. Don't whine. You've been stolen from your mother, treated like a dog, and judging by Robert's attitude, rejected by your family. I don't want to hear whining, you angry, soft boy. Sylvia stops and turns toward me. I notice the people around us stop their tasks, interested in our conversation. No, I begin, not wanting to piss her off. I don't even see the next slap, but it puts me on my ass. Next one's with the left hand. Are you angry, Nicholas? Sylvia looms over me like a raven. I feel something before I get to my feet. A hot, quick flash of hatred. A context-free rage at the fucked up situation I'm in. Answer is still no, because to be angry, I'd have to know a goddamn thing about what's going on. But my lunatic aunt just picked me up, and now I'm standing in the middle of whatever the English equivalent to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family is. For all I know, I'm your new king. So no, I'm not angry, I'm annoyed, and maybe a bit worried my gene pool really needs some chlorine. I'm shocked at what I'm saying, but I see some smiles, hear a few laughs. Sylvia's face seems to soften slightly. There's the grit in you, she says, starting to walk to an old barn. I catch up to her as I attempt in vain to dust myself off. Sylvia opens a small, strangely modern-looking door. Inside, a row of lights automatically flip on. In contrast to the rotten wood exterior, the inside of the barn looks modern. Design-wise, it's halfway between a hospital and a car repair shop. Equipment of unknown purpose, gurneys and cages of all sizes and types surround me. Sylvia walks to a door at the back, then pauses. Before I open this door, you need to understand something. There is no fortune-telling or reading of cards here. The cloak of the traveler, the bangles of the gypsy, these are all ways of navigating the world to us. Ways to exist on the fringes of society. The Grit family, we trade in the unknown. We find, we collect, and we sell. And ours is no petty collection of trinkets and tools not meant for the hands of man. Our grift is livestock. The woman opens the door, and what I see, sitting, chained in one corner of the industrial cement-walled cell, shakes everything I thought I knew about reality. He's 6.5 feet tall, his skin a waxy yellow, and every spare inch is festooned with black stitching, rusted pieces of metal or small splinters of bone. His face is noseless and asymmetrical, almost as if repaired or modified over and over. One eye is a small, sinister-looking orb with a red pupil, the other a massive, almost reptilian thing wildly twitching about. He wears no shirt, but a long, gray hide trench coat hangs down to his knees. I start to shake as I see it's made from layers of stitched human skin. He sneers at us. Long, conical teeth catch the harsh halogen light. The thing strains against the chains, but they bind him tightly enough to the wall he can barely move. You're not lasting more than 4 seconds, kid. Just turn the fuck around. I'll have you slitting your wrists in the corner by nightfall. The thing says, its voice is foul, almost a physical force, grating, rage-filled, and with a lunatic edge to it that makes me question exactly how much those chains can take. 3/10 Augustus, who do you think you are scaring with that limp dick of a threat? Sylvia says, confidently walking up to the creature. It snaps its jaws with a sound like a rifle shot. Nowhere near Sylvia, but enough to make me jump on the other side of the room. If I could stop being threatened and hearing my aunt talk about dicks, I'd be a huge fan. I say, something deep within me, pushing past the fear and lack of sleep. And if anything feels like just telling me what's going on instead of being vague and creepy, even better. The chain thing looks to me curious. Sylvia smirks. Augustus is going to be forced to fight others like him until eventually he gets what's coming to him for years of evil. You are going to stand next to him while he does it. Sylvia begins to walk away from the thing, ignoring vile threats of both the violent and carnal variety. I try to follow her out the door and she blocks me. If you're still sane and alive in the morning, I was right. Good luck, soft boy, she says before closing the heavy metal door. Without her, I feel tiny. That spark of rage is snuffed out and replaced with a cold sense of dread. You're going to have to turn around sometime, kid, the chained creature says. I turn slowly, resolving to make eye contact with the thing. I manage a second or two before looking away. The creature cackles, mocking me. Holy shit, they sent me an honest-to-God pussy. Whole family full of void-fucked apes and they send me you. The best part is you don't even get it. I can see what you're thinking, kid. I can see that tiny collection of hormones and goo you vainly call a brain going into overdrive trying to figure this out. Augustus starts. The creature kept going. I don't have an exact count, but it was at least 12 hours. I can only describe it as a verbal assault. Augustus drew from some dark wells. How it knew half of the things it did scared me as much as its clawed hands or piranha-like teeth. I lost something that night. The fears that thing drug up, the insecurities it played on, the secrets it knew, it crushed any childlike notions of safety or understanding the world I had. Don't take that the wrong way, I don't mean it toughened me up. It broke any sense of confidence I had, took away any feeling of safety. That goddamn thing in the trench coat changed me. I've lost track of how long it's been since I've slept, but I'm brought a tin plate heaped with eggs, sausage, and for some twisted reason, brown beans, and realize it's been at least a day since I've eaten. I sit around an abused, graffiti-carved picnic table with an eclectic combination of family I've never met. Sil sips a tea I can smell from 10 feet away and looks at me like I'm a used car. I'm always right, soft boy. Remember that, she says. It takes a half-dozen guys built like construction workers, with Sylvia following behind whispering things that wilt vegetation, to wrangle the creature into the back of an old, reinforced horse trailer. The inside is covered in totems, runes, and other spooky-looking errata. The entity becomes sluggish and disoriented as the heavy wooden doors close and get sealed with a massive brass lock. My mind begins to wander on the 3-hour trip through the back country of the UK. The sun sets, and my brain screams for sleep. That scream is silenced by the sense of mounting dread as we get closer to our destination. We pull up to an abandoned theme restaurant. The parking lot is full, the windows are boarded, and the walls covered in graffiti. The place is huge, more the size of a small stadium than a diner. The parking lot is full. The sputtering, sparking neon sign flashes Farron's Funhouse. It's a few minutes outside of a town I forgot to catch the name of. We can see lights on the horizon, but there's a feeling of wrong surrounding the building that makes them seem a million miles away. A half-dozen cousins of mine move Augustus into a strange, almost coffin-like box made of wood, steel and glass, covered in trinkets and symbols. The thing sneers groggily from within, its mismatched eyes rolling in its skull. I don't hear Sylvia approach. I notice her as she smacks me in the back of the head hard enough to make my ears ring. The old, cruel woman is walking toward the doors of this meeting place. Eyes forward, sneer on your face, and walk like you know where you're going, are her only instructions. For once, they're clear and simple. What I see inside easily keeps my attention, and I'm equal parts scared and pissed off, so looking edgy and miserable is my default state. At one point, this place was exactly what you'd think. I know you're all expecting it to be a run-down, rat-infested haunted house now, but it was stranger than that. The place was well kept on the inside, but everything was either in use or repurposed to house the couple hundred eclectic customers milling around. In the center is a massive lucite cube, crystal clear and housing a ball pit, jungle gym, and what looks to be a functional canteen, complete with a deep fryer and popcorn machine. It's a couple 100 meters aside and shaped like a flawed rectangle. Smoke hangs in the air. My aunt greets old friends in a handful of different languages. I smile and nod, still trying to understand what the hell this place is. We see Augustus being wheeled to the lucite box. Sylvia cuts a laughing Cyrillic conversation short, and her and I make our way to the box that barely restrains the hatred and death inside. At the other end of the lucite cube, I see a few people dressed in blue and maroon uniforms, if I were to guess vintage, from when this place served shitty food instead of violence. They surround a massive, hulking, lanky thing. It's obscured by smoke and poor lighting, but its 9-foot frame and unnatural gait are clear. The box holding Augustus sits about 10 feet away from me, inside the massive cage. The front opens. My instinct is to step backward, get as much distance between me and the thing inside as possible, but instead, I'm shoved. Before I can catch my balance, a workbook-clad foot is in front of me. I fall and stumble into the cage. I turn around to try and get out as fast as I can. I'm standing inches away from the creature, but I see Sylvia closing the clear, impermeable door. It hits me then. For the first time since this ordeal started, I realize how grim things are. Just like everyone else here, I've been raised on spooky shit packaged to be marketable. Little Monsters, The Addams Family, Harry Potter, hell, let's throw Pokemon and the like in there, as it's basically just dog fighting with a cute hat on. And I thought what was happening to me was somewhere on the Venn diagram of those things. But as I see the impassive look on the face of a woman I've known since I was a child, at a distance or no, as I'm locked in here with God knows what, I get it. I really get it. His laughter is like an ice pick. I turn to face him. Augustus brushes himself off, casually looking around the massive arena. Just hit you, didn't it, bud? He says, walking over to me, his steps impossibly quick, almost insect-like. You're not my trainer or my wrangler. You certainly aren't my fucking partner. The entity grabs my chin between two clawed fingers. You're a bait dog. Something for me and that new-blooded walking pun to fight over. My blood runs down his thumb. His grin cracks his face like a rotten melon. The monster pulls down, throwing me to the floor. A buzzer sounds, and a 3-minute timer, projected in transparent red, appears on the walls of the lucite arena. If I've got to hunt you down in this shithole, things are gonna be a lot worse for you. Stay put, bud. The trenchcoat-clad thing says, casually walking toward the creature on the opposite side of the arena. Closer now, I see it clearly. Inside of a pristine uniform is a twisted attempt at the human form. The torso is lumpen, asymmetrical but lean. Its arms nearly drag on the floor, yellow, infected-looking flesh, weeping pus like a snail's foot. Its eyes are black caves, with just the hint of something deep within. Its face is blank. A torn, haggard-looking gray tongue runs over rotting green teeth. The kid beside it looks around my age. He's big though, just as confused and afraid as I am. He wears a similar uniform to the creature, but his looks, abused, torn, blood-stained, like it's been handed down from one unlucky owner to the next. As the buzzer rings, the lanky, disgusting creature moves in a flash, tearing off the kid's right arm and beginning to chew it. The blood didn't set me off as terrible as it was. It was the 3 seconds between the act and the poor kid realizing what happened that pushed me over the edge. He started to scream, a horrible trapped animal kind of noise. He backs away from the monster beside him, gripping the crushed and torn remains of his forearm. Augustus laughs. His trench coat drags on the floor, leaving a streak of blood as he walks. Man after my own heart. So, I say we split these sides of beef for 2 minutes, then talk shop for a bit. Fuck these pretentious apes and their show. Augustus looks up to the massive thing. It remains impassive, gnawing on the hand. Don't be like that. We both know 2 halves are better than 1 whole. Win-win for both of us. Augustus gets a noise that sounds like an angry sewer pipe, and a dismissive wave of a long snake-like arm in response. The thing in the trench coat shrugs, turning around and stalking toward me. You have no luck at all, kid. I was gonna let you go last. But the pinworm back there wants to be a dick about things, so looks like things are getting started early. Augustus grins, his mouth opening shark-like. I stare down certain death, Augustus radiating fear, seeming to become more demonic with each step toward me. From behind him, a noise. I would have just assumed it was some part of the worm-like, filth-ridden thing eating. Augustus clears up that misconception. He turns, shaking, body language that of a wild animal. Was that a fucking snicker? A giggle? Are you fucking laughing at me, you literal fucking worm? He's panting, hands twitching like dying insects. He stands, inches from the other creature, dwarfed by it, teeth grinding, muscles straining. The worm thing casually tosses the flesh-bare hand toward Augustus. As it touches his coat, the arena erupts into a kind of wild, senseless, limitless violence. It doesn't feel like watching a fight. It's more like a car wreck or natural disaster. Pieces of jungle gym turn into lethal shrapnel as the blurred, filth-spewing scrum destroys them. I see the timer, 2:15. My mind starts to catch up, and I see the other kid, pale, whimpering, and trying in vain to staunch the blood spurting from his arm. I'm running, low and likely poorly, pulling my belt from my pants, and thanking myself for actually listening when I was forced to take a first aid course for a summer job last year. The kid is scared. He tries pushing me away, but I'm determined, and not down a couple pints of blood. I pull the belt with 2 hands, pull it through again and twist. It's ugly, it's not perfect, but the flow of blood begins to slow, then stop. We crawl behind a prize counter. Decades-old candy and stuffed animals surround us as we cower. A liquid-filled roar loud enough to crack the cheap glass cases fills the room. The kid is looking rough, blood still trickling from the torn stump of his forearm. I see some plastic bags and get an idea. I lean over to get them and feel something strange. At first I think I pulled a muscle. Then there is a deep, burning pain. Instinctively I pull away, and turn around. The kid is on his knees. Sanity has left his eyes. A cheap hunting knife in his remaining hand, he has a look of panic and determination on his face. "We have to win," he says, lunging at me with the blade. He's slow and I avoid it, but not by as much as I'd like. Blood runs down my back. For a moment I wonder how bad I'm hurt, but it doesn't really matter right now. I retreat, but the only thing keeping us from being torn apart by the whirlwind of shrapnel caused by the creatures is the counter. I can't escape. It's a stalemate, I'm no athlete, and the kid is built like a rugby player, but he's missing a hand and delirious from blood loss. I plead, I try and reason, and I dodge crazed strikes by increasingly narrow margins. Something large, either thrown or knocked loose, destroys the counter behind me. Suddenly all is chaos. I'm thrown into the kid in the uniform. Plaster dust surrounds us in a gray cloud. By the time the air clears, the kid is on top of me. I have his wrist in one hand, keeping the split tip of the blade inches from my face. The angle is too awkward. I can't get any leverage. It's not a stalemate. It's a war of attrition that I'm losing. I catch a glimpse of the two creatures. The worm thing is striking at Augustus, who stands still, limbs moving in arcing blurs, deflecting the blows and tearing off chunks of foul, tainted flesh. The tip of the knife begins to dig into my cheek. A drop of blood hits my eye. I grab the makeshift tourniquet with a free hand and roughly yank forward. The kid on top of me screams. Blood begins to pour. Torn flesh and a gore-soaked belt hit the ground. For a moment the weight on me eases up, and I push the knife forward. But the kid, he's too stupid or far gone to just back off. As I feel his strength start to fade, he presses himself harder. I expect him to back off as I begin to drive the roughly sharpened back edge of the knife into his neck. But he doubles down, leaning forward, trying to press the knife toward me. For a moment, every other fucked up thing going on around me doesn't matter. The world is small, silent, and consists of nothing more than the image of the knife ripping away a fist-sized strip from the kid's neck. He backs off when he realizes the extent of the damage, staring at me shocked, as if just not realizing the consequences of his actions. He dies slowly, poorly, and within inches of me. I feel no victory, no sense of being a winner, just a dark pit in the back of my mind. The loss of something that comes with taking someone's life. I stand, shell-shocked, staring at the corpse. My safety the last thing on my mind. The worm thing is hurt and attempts to dive into the ball pit. But somehow, defying physics, Augustus grabs it, holding the half-ton monster out with one hand. He arcs the thing, slamming it into the floor behind him. The spray of gore and viscera rivals pyrotechnics. The force leaves a blood-filled crater in the floor. Without missing a beat, Augustus starts to walk toward me, making a token effort of flicking pieces of bone and organ from himself. I'm frozen. I know nothing I can do could stop whatever he has planned. The creature picks up a jagged piece of lumber and looks at the clock. "We've got 45 seconds of fun left, kid," he says with a sneer. But as he passes the counter and sees the corpse, the look of imminent violence turns into amusement. "How's it feel to be a child killer, bud?" Augustus laughs. "Not that I can't tell from the look on your face. Fuck me, that knocked some gears loose, didn't it?" The thing walks forward, looking me over like a collectible. "I can't let that go to waste, now can I?" He slaps me lightly. "It's gonna be a fucking blast watching you break down, kid. Wonder what drives you nuts first, this kid being in your dreams, or the fact that at some point I'm gonna get bored and start giving you all the pain you feel you deserve?" Of course, I made it out alive. It'd be kind of hard to have posted this if I didn't. But now, I sit in a dingy room in a farmhouse halfway across the world from home, surrounded by family and monsters, all of which seem out to get me. Being forced to risk my life in some kind of blood sport. Maybe I'll be back. Maybe I'll be dead by the next time I get a chance to post anything. If anyone has any help, please post it in the comments. I'm in a dark place here and no one else seems to be on my side. I decided to let everyone know how things are going. I didn't expect so many people out there would care about what's happening to me. I'd say it's humbling, but, well, my situation has been humbling me since I left the States. You guys cheering me on and trying to help, it's kept me going though. So, I figure the least I can do is keep you all updated until something prevents me from doing so. Likely in a permanent fashion. I'll say the ride home was awkward, to say the least. For all of the grim predictions running through my head going to the spectacle, on the way back they were 10 times worse. I wasn't caged, shackled and tortured when I returned. If I said I was greeted with concern by the handful of distant relatives and lost souls, I'd be over-exaggerating. But there was a bit of respect and kindness. I was patched up. As far as being stabbed goes, apparently I got lucky. There was food, question-free beer, and a healthy number of people asking how things went. All I wanted to do was sleep, but something kept me going. Kept me answering questions I'd rather not have. Kept my fear-fried brain making conversation and trading verbal jabs. A tap on my shoulder startles me. The sun is rising, and if I don't get to sleep soon, I'm gonna fall over. You're half. Sylvia says it's just shy of 1,000 pounds. All this was for, what is this? $600 American. I say, walk with me. Sylvia begins, I follow. Money isn't much good if I'm dead. I say, my tone sullen and exasperated. Then don't die. She replies, walking across the debris-strewn scrub grass toward the farmhouse. Do you have any shame? You kidnapped me in the middle of the night to feed me to a couple of demons. I'm your nephew, for Christ's sake. I'm not yelling. I don't think my body is capable of that much exertion at this point, but my words are clear. I'm not your aunt, Nicholas. Great-great-great-grandmother. Give or take a generation. It's been a long time. And if I was doing, as you suggest, yes, I would feel a deep shame. Sylvia lets the answers and questions ferment in my mind as we walk. So why not tell me what's going on? Maybe teach me some of that magic you were tossing around at the airport. We stop outside a sliding door. Sylvia has a genuine look of amusement on her face. Magic? Nicholas, magic is what stupid people call being fooled. Magic is the priest's sermon, the fortune teller's reading, the huckster's pitch. It's a way to create vast amounts of power from nothing. The world is full of things that defy the laws of nature. What I do, what those of the family with me do, is understand them. We learn, we improvise, and we adapt. We do not make power from nothing, we find it and use it. Sylvia watches me, judging my response to her statement. So that's what you meant before, about the trappings of the gypsy. This whole vibe, it's a smokescreen. Assholes expect the grits to be some Romani stereotype and give you a wide berth. When strange shit happens, they chalk it up to some kind of con or something they've seen in a movie. Either way, they aren't looking for monster fights and supernatural research. I know I'm in the ballpark when she pats me on the shoulder hard enough to hurt. And the value of your half is somewhere around 30,000. We wager in esoteric items, favors, and creatures. When you leave, I'll make you a fair offer for what is yours. You'll understand more in the morning after you have a chance to look around. Sylvia says before showing me a sparse, but clean and comfortable room. I wake up in the early afternoon, something beyond the obvious nagging at me. After a cup of nearly caustic tea, I finally realized what it was. Sylvia, she told me a lot last night, but many of my questions were avoided. I know about her and this place, but my fate, beyond another round of tug-of-war between two nightmares, is unknown. That being said, my second conclusion is that I need to start rolling with the punches. I've tried calling the police. They asked how Sylvia was doing before I said my name. My parents, anyone, and like it or not, for one unsaid reason or another, I'm stuck here. I'm gonna skip a lot of introductions. Reading me introducing myself 50 times and trying not to be awkward around folks that seem way too okay with me dying probably wouldn't be the best use of your time. As I explore the grounds, I enter one of a handful of old barns. The inside has pegboard walls hung with tools spanning the spectrum from mundane to esoteric enough I have no idea what they are. Inside, among benches strewn with a random assortment of objects and equipment, stand two men. The first is Colin. He's pale as a ghost, eyes bloodshot and sleep-deprived. He wears an Aerosmith shirt and tool belt that is making his pants lose a battle with gravity. The 40-something is holding an electrode connected to a thick, black wire directly patched into the main breaker. The second, David, is a short, olive-skinned man in his mid-50s. His outfit consists of a tweed jacket, blue jeans, and plain white shirt. Between them on a grounded workbench sits a small snow globe. Within stands a faded ballerina, one arm lost, floating randomly through the liquid. My teeth ache as the breaker begins to make a dangerous humming noise. For a couple of seconds, a short blue spark arcs from the electrode to the snow globe. The air smells of ozone to the point where I'm convinced I've burned out my nose hairs. The two men argue a bit between themselves in a language I've heard but never learned to speak. Then turn as they notice me. "Nick, come settle an argument between your uncle and I," David says. "Don't know how much help I'm going to be, but I'll do my best," I say, walking up. "The kid has no idea what's going on, David." Colin says, "I know, but we're not looking for an expert opinion." "Nick, what year is it?" David asks. 1993. I say without hesitation. "What the hell?" I add. My brain is a bit fried, but not enough to screw up the date by 30-something years. "God damn it," Colin says. "I knew it," exclaims David. "This piece of shit is getting binned. You look confused, kid. It's called a gimmick. It's the stuff side of what we deal in. Some of it's 2 steps off of a horror novel. Most of it, though, it's just strange. Figuring them out is 95% engineering and 5% esoterica. They teaching you anything across the pond?" Colin asks. The question leads to a conversation. The conversation leads to a week of me shadowing the two finicky, strange guys. I'd go into more detail, but as the days go by, things seem more and more like spending time with some out there branches in the family tree. As terrifying as everything has been, as terrifying as it is, it's interesting. But I wouldn't be writing if things were sunshine and roses, though, would I? One day, after working with objects that scared, confused, and frustrated me in equal measure, I realized there was something I was avoiding. So I found myself standing in front of Augustus, the creature held upright and immobile in its coffin-like cage. The plexiglass window is cracked. It's worse than I thought it would be. Every time I look at the thing's face, I see the blood it made me spill. I see the power it wields, and the murderous intent in its twisted pit of a mind. But sometime soon, I'm going to be next to it again. I have to be able to keep myself together. I have to understand this thing as much as I can. "Hey killer, how the fuck you doing?" Augustus taunts. Shame reddens my fear-paled face. "Can we talk?" I say. I want it to be a demand. It comes out as a whimper. "What do we have to talk about, bud? What about this are you not picking up on yet?" Augustus is smug, confident even while confined. "How you seem to have this limitless ego when you're being held by literally the oldest woman possible." I'm too scared to say this above a whisper. "That dusty old wizard's sleeve out there? She'll fucking get hers. Lucky bitch on a lucky day is all that was. But luck runs out, and when it does, I'm gonna uproot your entire sad little family tree." Augustus threatens. I actually take a step backward and almost turn. The fear this thing causes, it's more than the knowledge of what it can do, it's a force in and of itself. Augustus, why not hear me out? I plead. Because kid, that's not how this story goes. I've got nothing but time. I'll be around till the heat death of the fucking universe. I don't need to hear things like you out, I don't need to bargain. No matter how airtight your inbred little clan thinks these bonds are, eventually, someone always makes a mistake. Something small like a wrong angle on a rune. Or, as the thing talks, the door to the coffin-like cage holding it starts to slowly swing outward. Something big, like forgetting to set the fucking padlock. I'm already running as he talks, but he's standing in front of the exit before I can take a step. He looms in front of the door, coat spreading, seemingly of its own accord, making the patchwork killer seem like some kind of twisted manta ray. He locks eyes with me. I'm frozen, gripped in terror so intense I have no idea if it's mundane or the aura of fear Augustus projects. Those mismatched orbs burrow into me. I feel like this thing can see into my soul. He inhales for an impossibly long time, a slick, menacing grin spreading across his leathery face. Yeah, today's the day, kid, he says, a kick sending me across the floor like a smooth rock across the surface of a pond. I've never felt pain like this. I try to stand, but my knee refuses to bend. I hit the ground and my ribs scream. I'm sure at least one was broken in the tumble. I hear Augustus' footsteps. My struggles to get to my feet are useless. Seconds in, I'm in literal crippling pain. He grabs me by the throat, taking his time as he raises me above his head. The look of joy on his face as I choke and struggle to breathe twists his features. For a moment he appears nearly snake-like. He holds the tips of his claw-like nails against my stomach, then draws his arm back. Don't worry, bud. I'm not just going to tear out your heart. Everyone does that shit. This isn't going to be a sprint, it's a fucking marathon. I just want to aerate the track a little bit before we start. His hand blurs and I close my eyes hoping I don't last very long. Stop, I hear a deep, smooth, male voice say. I hit the ground and try to see who just stopped the beginning of my execution. But the pain, the cracked ribs, pulled muscles, and long ragged scrapes have me seeing spots. When my vision clears, I see a tall, blonde man with impossibly angular features, dressed in an immaculate black and mauve suit. His eyes try to look kind, but there is something wrong behind them. Something waiting to be let out. Who are you? I say, one lip, split and torn. You can call me Art. Arthur Deus if you feel like being formal. But what you want to know is why I'm here. Well, Nicholas, to simplify things, think of me as the older brother of the leering terror your aunt has trapped here. As Arthur talks, I notice something. The motes of dust in the air are hanging still. I have no problems with you taking him. I haven't seen you. I don't know your name. Couldn't stop you if I wanted to. I ramble. Arthur holds up a finger. I go silent. If only it were that easy. See, Nicholas, your aunt and I have quite the history. And as much as it pains me to admit it, she's a crafty one, and has the means to make things very difficult for me. Sylvia cannot know I'm involved. This is why I have an offer for you. As Art says this, he waves a hand, almost dismissively. Like a switch being flipped, my pain stops. I watch as my wounds begin to seal and fade, amazed. What is it? I say. The words feel like they have weight. Sylvia is looking for someone to take over for her. As old as she is, she's not immortal. You're her third attempt. I'm not going to lie to you and say I care about what's happening to the humans involved in this grim little spectacle. But I care about my family, and to a lesser extent, those like myself. This blood sport that your aunt is a part of, it's vile. It's world-spanning, and it's for nothing more than greed and bragging rights. I want to change this, and I would like you to help me. Art's tone is slick and confident. If I do, then you get him to back off? I say, pointing to Augustus. Art looks dismayed for a moment. That's not something I can really promise Nicholas. If anything could force him to listen to reason, he wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. My heart sinks as Art says this. Fuck off, Art. Augustus says. Arthur rolls his eyes. They seem to go just a little too far back. But what I can do is have a conversation with him, impress upon him how important it is he works with you. Art pats me on the shoulder before turning toward his sibling. His hand is impossibly hot. This kid dies, that is not my fault. You've seen this shit, he's not built for it, just bust me out of here. Augustus isn't far off of pleading in his tone. You know that's not possible. Cannot let Sylvia know I'm here. But given time, I will have you out. Art assures. Fact remains, this kid gets on the wrong side of a blade or a fucking werewolf or something, that's not on me. Even if he manages to keep his lungs in his chest. Look at him. His mind is cracking, he's either insane or goddamned catatonic in 2 months. Now Augustus sounds like a cocky piece of shit again. Of course, if he dies or succumbs mentally, that's not on you. But I want you to make a promise to me. I want you to understand that this child cannot be harmed by your hand. It sounds like Art is talking to a 5-year-old. Augustus shrugs before replying. The fuck you want me to say? You know me. You know I can't say I'm not hurting this kid. And I sure as hell am not making a promise about it so you can get who involved when nature takes its course. Fuck this kid. Get me out of here. Arthur sighs and turns from Augustus, walking to me. Nicholas, I have something to tell you. He says. There's a gravity to his tone that clearly makes Augustus uncomfortable. Art, what are you doing? The trench coat wearing creature asks. Art kneels, bringing himself eye to eye with me. Don't do this. Augustus says. Then promise. Art replies. A few seconds of silence go by. As you can see, I cannot guarantee your safety, Nicholas. But, for his own good, I want to tell you a word, one that will make my myopic brother look at things a little differently, if the need arises. I'd use it sparingly. It's not meant for those like yourself. It will have a physical, mental, and spiritual toll. But it might spare you the worst of his excesses. That word was the last thing Arthur said to me. With a staggering, disorienting lurch, time began to move forward. Kept moving forward for the next month. I learned a lot over that time, but not what you might expect. As it turns out, there is a hell of a lot more engineering, physics, and chemistry involved in working with the supernatural than summoning circles and nude eyes. But eventually, the day I was dreading came. The venue was a strip club of all places, a massive building on the outskirts of Norwich. Gaudy neon lights illuminate a place that, unlike the theme restaurant, seems to be in active use. There was a different ambience this time. The folks milling around the rune-etched lucite box seemed more sedate, and a hell of a lot richer. The lighting was professional. Driving music sets a professional sports tone. This time I walk in the cage of my own accord. It's not pride or bravery, but simply knowing I have no choice. The roar of the crowd stokes my fear as Augustus slowly opens the door of his coffin-like vessel. He loves the attention, his grin both horrifying and genuine. Guess we're in the big leagues now, eh, killer? Augustus prods. I'm sweating. I've cut a little weight over the past month, unintentionally, but as I wonder what horror is going to come walking in the other side of this cage. I don't think being in marginally better shape and having a working knowledge of basic engineering is going to do me a lot of good. Suddenly the crowd is silent. Lights illuminate a spot at the far end of the massive lucite box. She's small, slight, and has gray, lifeless skin. Her eyes are massive, her body beautiful, but exaggerated to the point of looking cartoonish. She's not wearing much, a small t-shirt, and what I'll generously call a bikini bottom. Beside her is a massive brick slab of a man, late 20s or early 30s. His eyes are wild. He's covered in layers of scars and burns. He wears an old, worn prison uniform that's never seen a washing machine. He matches her strange, boneless stride with a loping wolf-like gait. Entering the ring, you know her, you love her. She's the vixen of the void, the nymph of nothing, Norwich's own, sweet Frances, and at her side, brought in at great expense from the land of Twinkies, cheeseburgers, and weak beer, the core killer, the military mangler, with 24 out of ring kills and 36 in, Big Billy Speck. An announcer screams. The crowd bursts into life. Noise shakes the walls of the cage. And on the other side, I don't know, some wanker in a trench coat, and a kid that isn't even old enough to be here. Let's watch them die. He finishes. Augustus looks enraged. His teeth chatter. He flexes his clawed hands. I walk in his shadow as he advances to face the creature and her second. I know you. The gray skin thing says, her voice high-pitched. As she speaks, I notice what appears to be a thick scar bisecting her from forehead to stomach. Never heard of you. Neither will anyone else after this. Augustus says with a grin. You're the runt of the litter, right? Royal blood but peasant flesh. That's what they say, no? Frances says. She grins a toothless smile. The inside of her mouth, a black void. Fuck my family. What I am is as good as meat gets. I give myself power. All you have is a cosmic STD. Augustus stares Frances down as he talks. Frances reacts with nothing more than a coy look. Bill stares down at me, the handle of some large blade sticking out of his right pocket, and a short length of chain wrapped around his left forearm. A buzzer cuts through the roar of the crowd. The world seems to consist of nothing more than myself and the horrors around me as the timer begins to count down. Like a flash, Augustus leaps at Frances, but her body stretches and contorts as she moves. He never gets close. I tear myself away from the clash of unnatural creatures as I look to the mutilated killer in front of me. I didn't come in unarmed, but I also was expecting another kid, and wanted to avoid what happened last time if at all possible. My heart races as I pull the small black can from the pocket of my worn, gray hoodie. For a second, I feel like a badass. I've got the can of mace aimed and spraying before Bill can react. For seconds tick by before the can is empty. Bill is soaked in thick yellow liquid. It runs down his face like tears. The psycho doesn't even blink. You good? He asks before slapping my outstretched arm aside and shattering my nose with a backhanded blow that seemed almost an afterthought. Augustus screams in frustration, moving faster than I can track, but not able to put a scratch on the amorphous, rubbery woman. Bill uncoils the chain, and I feel a sudden deep, crushing pain in my chest. I stumble backward, coughing. He laughs and whips the chain out again. I manage to see the next blow, but have no way of stopping it. He manages to hit the same spot. The pain is overwhelming. My lungs feel bruised. I can't breathe. Frances seems to have grown bored avoiding Augustus. He pants, sucking wind as she stands in front of him. That scar splits not fully, but from forehead to the bridge of her nose. What's behind it is nothing. I mean that in terms so literal I can't describe how it looked. It was more of a feeling than a sight. Looking into it made me understand just how empty something can actually be. Pieces of Augustus' skin and flesh begin to simply not exist. His look of confusion lasts for about a second before he's sent sailing through the air by a long whip-like arm. The trenchcoat-clad creature extracts himself from a tangled mess of tables, chairs, and debris. Frances and Bill laugh, mocking us. Let's trade dance partners, Augustus says, his two-handed shove launching my broken body into Frances. She catches me, her body absorbing the impact. Fear is making me hyperventilate. Physical trauma is turning that into a wheezing pant that feels like being waterboarded. Frances looks down at me, violence and seduction in her eyes. Make things easy for me and I'll let you go out with a bang, she says. The look of carnal violence on her face makes me gag. Augusta struggles with Bill, the creature's wounds many and severe. A minute remains, but I don't know if I can last another 10 seconds. Frances stretches one arm into a thin tendril. It begins to circle me, caging me into a progressively smaller area. I'm 16, you paranormal nonce. I blurt out, the pain from my broken nose almost making me pass out. That's the word they use around here, right? For the kind of creep that gets supernatural powers to hit on a kid? I can't run, I can't fight, all I can do is try to distract this thing for another 42 seconds. Her face begins to turn, shifting and warping into something resembling a cattle skull more than a person. The wet snapping noise distracts both Frances and myself. Augustus has his hand buried in the chest of the convict. He holds the man aloft for a moment. Augustus says something in a language I can't even guess at, and with one fluid motion tears the black, decayed heart from his own chest and replaces it with that of the killer. He begins to scream, then laugh, wounds spraying ichor. He seems to swell, his face a mask of pleasure and ill intent. Death machine just needed a new engine, Augustus says with a cackle. Frances forgets about me and lashes out, quite literally, at Augustus. Limbs becoming a frenzied blur of snaking flesh, destroying anything they so much as graze. He wades into the storm, flirting around the edges of the cage, making her chase him with the lethal limbs. The conflict is a blur, but at the 23-second mark I see it. As much as I hate the prick, I'm almost impressed. She's tangled, somewhere among the bent stripper poles and doorways to private booths. She's caught herself. Augustus takes his time now. Her body is stretched thin, looped around door handles and under stages. 10 seconds left. Augustus's feet from her writhing, blob-like form. Her features pulled taut enough to be nearly non-existent. Takes a lot to open yourself up, doesn't it? Augustus says, kneeling. He holds the killer's knife in one hand. Why don't I do it for you? The blade is barely touching her flesh as the timer ends. Fuck sake, Augustus says, standing and letting the knife fall to the floor. Something about the way he walks to one end of the lucite cage worries me. Nobody likes a draw, but as far as they go, that was one hell of a kiss to your sister, wasn't it, folks? No one is defeating our lovely lady of legend. But let's hear it for the man who tried. Trenchcoat. The announcer screams over the loudspeaker. The crowd is on their feet. Bets are being paid out, and two groups of people are trying to open doors conveniently barred by flesh no person is going to get through. I jog up to him, my body screaming at me every step of the way. He taps along one clear wall. Cheap runes, Augustus says, before driving his fist like a spear through the lucite. The hole he makes is about the size of a watermelon, his hand easily going through all 6 inches of the wall. But it's not big enough to accommodate the body of the poor 20-something he drags through. In an instant, the man is flensed, his small bones broken, eyes, ears and jaw, nothing more than a smear. But he's still alive, wailing a haunting death bellow as he struggles to understand what just happened. Stop! I scream, horrified. Blood sprays from my ruined nose. You think I won't say it? Augustus slowly cocks his head, punching his fist through the wall again, and tossing another victim beside the first. In front of your family and that aunt of yours? You think this is bad? The shit she'll do to you if she knows you even looked at my dangerous brother's looking prick of a brother will make this look like a massage. Trenchcoat pauses, letting the reality sink in. letting my absolute lack of power envelop me like a blanket. You want me to stop? I'll give you something no one else has. A choice. Either finish one of these pieces of meat off or have a taste. He brings his hand back for another strike, and I make my choice. No, I'm not telling you which one. I can share a lot of things with you guys. But I'm sorry, how I picked to save the rest of the people in that place is a shame I'm going to carry on my own. Don't know if any of you will want to hear from me again, after knowing what I've had to do, who I've had to deal with, but I'm going to keep posting. This is getting nothing but worse, and maybe I can save someone else the same fate. Looks like things got worse. In what universe would I ever do you a favor? I say, sweeping the floor of the reinforced barn. It's not a favor, it's a trade, bud. What do you want in return? Trenchcoat asks from within the coffin-like cage. To be back home 8 months ago. I reply, over the past few weeks I've managed to integrate myself into the day-to-day life on the farm. Things are still a grim, horrifying slog, but with every day it gets a bit easier to deal with. Give me something I can do. The creature pleads. Why, so I can wind up on the end of another gotcha moment. I'm good, is my answer. A few minutes of silence go by. Augustus breaks it. I don't know many secrets of the universe. Facts not really my bag. But I know a couple. How about I share one with you? No one, not the Pope, not my brother, not the shitbird perched on the highest branch of my twisted family tree, knows what happens when you die. Some of us never will, of course. Others have ways of avoiding it, but at the end of the day, when the lights truly go out, we know next to nothing. We do know one thing, though. There is judgment by who? Who knows? Why? Not important. But at the end of the day, if your battery can't be recharged, you really want to be thinking about how many marks are on each side of the ledger. I don't reply, and for the next hour or so I ignore the pleading and hinting Trenchcoat does. But that night, as I sip acidic tea and try to get a handle on how in the fuck old televisions function, his offer is at the forefront of my mind. He wants to kill specifically 6 teenagers who, according to him, have been murdering classmates yearly in a twisted ritual. He wants me to think this is some kind of noble act. He frames it as almost superheroic. The evil prick knows how I feel, knows that I see the blood on my hands every day, and would kill, possibly literally, for some way to atone. Is it a play? I honestly don't think so. Something about how eager the twisted thing is, about how he's treating the situation as a buyer's market makes me think something about this makes it important to him. He offers me everything besides safety and protection. I'm desperate for help, but I have no way to hold him to any agreement. So the thought rolls around in my mind, staving off the few hours of sleep I get. Okay, so I have it on good authority that tea is supposed to taste better over here. What the hell is wrong with this? I say, sitting around an outside table with Sylvia, Daffod, and Colin. Sylvia smiles. Barium, calcium, and a touch of castor oil. I look at the brew, then at her. If I had told you when you got here you need to drink that to mitigate the effects of working with void-touched objects and creatures, you'd have assumed the worst and found a way to avoid drinking it. Good to see you becoming more perceptive, though. Sylvia explains. That's called paranoia, Syl. I reply. She laughs, lighting a cigarette. Do you know why I've let you figure things out on your own? The ancient woman asks. Accepted? Yes. Understood, not in the slightest. I answer, wondering what sadist invented the scone. It's because I need a leader. Someone who can understand. Not a boy who puts his head down and listens to orders. Someone who can make their own decisions when the time comes. And I think that time is coming soon. Her statement feels like a question. If I chose to be here, I'd be honored. I counter. That attitude, on the other hand, needs work. Nicholas, today we talk about what's really going on. We play a role in a much larger organization. Us and other families like us are the boots on the ground, so to speak. Our job is not to capture creatures or hoard esoteric goods. We do not foil the schemes of demons, nor blind those who look too deeply into the abyss. We're given information about events that could steer the path of humanity into a brick wall, and our job is to make sure they don't happen. Sylvia reveals. Something is happening with these fights? I ask. As I said, perceptive. Yes, it could be next week, it could be in a decade or two. Right now, we know very little about it, other than when it happens, it would be in our best interests to be of a high standing in the pits. She replies, I absorb the information, and T-drug lace tea in equal measure. As I do, I feel something. I feel I'm a part of what's going on. This is gonna sound dumb as hell, but up until this point I hadn't been taking things seriously. Don't get me wrong, death is on the table and I was trying to avoid that. But I was just treading water, hoping something or someone came by and to get me out of this situation. But as Syl lays things out, I start to think of my place here, what I can be doing to better my state. Here is the part where you avoid telling me why you couldn't have used anyone around here. I prod. I keep her gaze. Colin and Daffod shift uncomfortably. Augustus, he's a tricky one, but a very lucky find for us. I've tried 2 others. A boy and a girl, both I practically raised. Marco, he was a warrior, but the demon got in his head. There was nothing that could be done beyond end his suffering. Zelma, I won't talk about. That thing, it has a way of turning someone's best traits against them. You are a blank slate, but you're family. You're my best guess as to how we can use him to our advantage. And this is why I need you not to listen, but to understand, to see what's happening and make your own decisions. If I were to give you my knowledge, if I were to arm you with the best weapons and the most powerful esoteric objects I know, he'd just have more to turn against you. Sylvia's revelation scares me and puts a massive weight on my shoulders all at the same time. Confidence and fear are both dangerous emotions. The 2 of them are almost like drugs in a way. After 8 months of mainlining fear, the tiny line of confidence Sylvia gave me went straight to my head. Trenchcoat told me where to find a video file, and after a couple of weeks of running it through every possible test I could, to check for any kind of manipulation, supernatural or otherwise, I watched it. I was confident that the world would be much better off without the people committing the vicious acts contained in those 20 minutes of footage. A teenage view of morality, I admit. But what do you want? I'm a teenager. We watched The Abandoned House from across the street. It's a dingy, urban blight-affected suburb. That being said, how no one seems to notice the 7-foot freak with me, I have no idea. The kid inside smoking stolen cigarettes and illegally supplied booze is a husky young guy of about 14. The half-dozen kids that show up a couple hours later look closer to my age. Last couple of years of high school, I'm guessing. The way they get into the house tells me they've done this before. The backpacks they all carry tell me they're there for a purpose. How fucking funny would it be if I just killed you here and took off? Trenchcoat says, looming behind me. I tense. It's a joke. Out of my whole rotten family, Art and I are close. I'm not going anywhere. Unfortunately for you. Trenchcoat shoves me to the ground as he walks toward the house. We get in through a basement window. I fit easily. Trenchcoat contorts his body to fit through the thin opening, somehow doing so silently. I keep hearing Sylvia in my head, telling me how she needs someone that can make his own decisions. As I stand in the litter-strewn basement, beside a creature with child murder on its mind, I question the decision that I made. At first, the illumination is dim, nothing more than scraps of moonlight filtered through splintered wood. But with an industrial click, suddenly a half-dozen light bulbs bathe the basement in harsh, yellowish light. Harsh, but not harsh enough to cause the reaction I see from Trenchcoat. He squints and tries, unsuccessfully to turn away from the lights. Something about them is causing him discomfort. I get my hopes up for a moment he's gonna burst into flame or turn into dust or something. But no dice. The sight of the walking nightmare looking pained and confused makes me panic. But before I can think of how I fucked up, I hear a voice. The room, by the sounds of it, the entire house has been rigged with speakers, cleverly recessed in sconces and corners. Augie, long time no see. And I see you brought a little Renfield fellow with you. The voice is modulated. Trenchcoat looks curious for a moment. Who is this? You that clown that's been fucking with Art? He guesses. The voice laughs. Nope. Who I am is a guy who managed to find a few boxes of light bulbs from '93. Then again, with eBay, that could make me just about anyone. Trenchcoat turns and looks toward the window we came in. He reaches a hand toward it, stopping a few inches away. That's fucking interesting, he says, eyes darting around the room. Isn't it though? The voice replies, clearly hearing the creature's whisper. Tonight you get the pay for centuries of the worst shit committed by man or beast. I've made sure of that. No one in this house is going anywhere for the next 8 hours. I'm sure the rest of the house guests are pretty confused as to what's going on. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, so let me give you the Cliff's Notes. You kids have been killing a monster a year for half a decade. You were the perfect bait, and I have faith you'll be able to outweed Augie long enough to make it out of here. If not, you'll still have helped kill one of the worst things to walk the face of the earth. What the hell is he talking about? I ask, a sinking feeling in my gut. That's what you're worried about right now? Yeah, these kids are more Scooby Gang than Manson family. Don't blame me for the fact it only took an out-of-context exorcism video and some promises of making things right with the universe to get you on board with killing them. Trenchcoat spits. I feel afraid, stupid, and small. Which is to say, lately, business as usual. I begin to break light bulbs. I notice no runes, or anything else that would indicate they have any kind of supernatural origin. As the basement dims, Trenchcoat starts to breathe easier. What's going on? What stopped you from leaving? I ask. This little shit is playing the game. Trenchcoat says to himself as much as to me. He looks deep in thought, inspecting the glass from the bulbs. What are you talking about? I say, my voice cracking slightly. I hear noises upstairs, frantic footfalls, indecipherable shouting. Trenchcoat turns to me, exasperated and filled with anger. You've heard of rules, right? All that don't turn left on East Street at 3:24 a.m. kind of shit? The creature starts. More and more of them popping up lately. Can't miss the things. Well, your kind seems great at finding them, but fucking awful at figuring out what they are. It's not someone's new job or creepy school. The answer is so damn simple, but all of you've missed it. It's a game. It's the game. It's ran by the thickest branches of my family tree, and the stakes are high enough even I don't really understand. And whoever has us here, he's weaponized it. The crazy fuck. Call on your family for help then. I say, starting to deal with the fear and confusion. You first. Is Trenchcoat's reply. I get his point, and for a twisted, shitty moment, I find myself relating to the murderous thing I've been saddled with. So what's the plan? I ask. Get my hands on whoever's been stalking me. Between A and B, probably kill those little do-gooders upstairs out of spite. I need you to circumvent rules we come across. Humans need to agree to follow the rules. It's why people encounter them in jobs and schools so much. I'm not human, if you haven't noticed. I don't get a choice. I'm shaking my head as Augustus relates his plan. We're not hurting those kids. I say defiantly. I'm sure you'll have no problem with that. But I'm a goddamn child-killing monster. Bud, how long is that gonna take to sink the fuck in? Me not doing what I do isn't like giving up smokes. Think of it like not having a slash for months on end. Sooner or later, like it or not, I'm either finding a bathroom or pissing my pants. The rant scares me, but it makes me think. Something about Augustus, it seems very 90s. Whoever was on the speakers was talking about the light bulbs being from 93. I'm picking up on a very distinct pattern. I file that information with the rest of the disconnected lore I've managed to find on Trenchcoat as I follow him up the steep, narrow set of stairs. He whips the thin wood door open, taking an aggressive, lurching step into the living room beyond, surely ready to dispense too-far quips and limitless violence, as per usual. But that doesn't happen. His rage-filled scowl turns into a look of resignation. "Fuck," is the monster's last word before he disappears. I cautiously walk up the loose splinter-ridden stairs, expecting Augustus to be waiting around the corner, or engaged in combat with some other horror. But once I get to the top, there's nothing more sinister than a living room covered in dust and graffiti strewn with old bottles and new stains. I know my chance when I see it. The particle board sealing the bay window is rotten, the glass long since broken. No monster, no crazy family. I'll take my chances with the streets of the UK. I tap the crumbling wood with a foot. It rattles, it won't take much to make a hole. I line up a kick. Freedom no more than a quarter-inch of rotten wood away. "I wouldn't do that," says a voice behind me, male around my age I'd guess, but with a confidence that makes me listen, rigged with a load of C4 in the window frame. Don't take my word for it, guy wasn't very subtle. Sure enough, I see small wires running along the edges of the frame and embedded in the particle board. I turn around. The 6 people standing in front of me have a vibe I can only describe as severe. "Are we going to have issues?" A slight, dark-skinned guy asks. "You making threats?" I reply, "No, he isn't." It's the same voice that warned me about the explosives. It belongs to a square-jawed kid with short black hair. He's wearing a gray hoodie and separates himself from the group. "Call me Kent, and I'm in charge of making threats." "Sid, he's our people person. He's just trying to see if you're someone we need to worry about." "We don't have time to figure this kid out. Leave him." A short, ginger girl says, "Ami, why don't I stay out of equipment? And you and Kent let me figure this kid out?" Sid says, "I'm Nick. I volunteer." "Good to meet you, Nick," Sid says, walking around Kent. "Didn't mean to start things off on the wrong foot. We've just gotten used to doing these kinds of things in our own way over the past bit. We get a little weird around this time of year, if I'm being honest." I nod, apprehensive at giving any kind of detailed response. "Derek," says a tall, pale guy. "Research." Liam, a tanned boy in a flannel shirt and deep blue jeans, tells me. "Oxford doesn't talk. Accident a couple of years back. I'm logistics," he figures spooky shit out. Oxford is thin and bald. His face looks much older than it should. Like he's the victim of some kind of wasting disease. Telling these kids the truth would be complicated. And something about their war vet demeanor makes me want to keep things simple. So I give them a version of the truth. One where I was plucked from my room by Trenchcoat and brought here for a slow death. They buy it, I think. Well, I don't know what this jigsaw wannabe has planned, but trust me when I say, it can't be much worse than the things we've went through. Kent says, trying to be reassuring. "Just one more thing." Sid begins. "Why all the scars? I know I've won most of the group over, but I don't like the look Sid is giving me. Work on a farm, on top of that, the family owns an auction. Lots of bent steel and splinters, what can I say?" I say, trying to sound casual. "Fair enough, that accent though." Sid's look becomes almost predatory as he talks. "Immigration, my guy. What's with the 3rd degree?" I reply, "We've just met and I've only asked 3 questions. Humor me here though. You get taken in the night by that thing that winked out of existence." Seems pretty nice of him to let you put on shoes. Sid lets his statement hang. Kent turns. I don't like where this is going. Panic and fear start to well up. What are you thinking, Sid? Kent asks. Kid's lying, but he's good at it. Sid answers. You saying this has turned into a me situation? Kent's question starts a deep pit in my stomach. I don't know if we need to go that far, but I don't like the idea of him having seen our faces. I think this is a Liam situation. As Sid says this, I look to Liam, who already seems deep in thought. Local cops will back our story, but he could go beyond them. We tie him up until all of this is done, and we get some video of him putting a blade into the body upstairs. He goes telling any stories. It's us and the locals versus some yank on video stabbing the kid. Liam suggests. I tried to fight. It went embarrassingly. Kent had me on the ground in some kind of arm lock in about a second. I'm bound to an old wooden chair with electrical cords, dragged into a room on the second floor where the chubby kid from before lays face down in a coagulated pool of his own blood, surrounded by the trappings of misspent youth. The door locks and I stare at the corpse, wondering what in the hell went on up here, and in what universe are these psychopaths anything other than what they seemed on screen. Time becomes almost malleable. I'm terrified to the point where every moment seems to stretch out forever. Then I hear it, a wet, organic noise. It starts below the body and slowly starts to spread. After a minute or two, the body starts to jerk and twitch. The room is dim as hell, but some kind of ropey, flesh-like substance is sealing off the door. I watch as the corpse clumsily gets to its feet. Its skin pale, its throat slit to the point of near decapitation. The head falls backward, obscenely with a small spurt of thick blood. I scream. I thought I'd been getting used to being face to face with monsters, but fully bound, inches away from a kid that seems to be filled with a twisting mass of barbed, writhing intestine-like tentacles, I realize I'm not used to shit. The ropey mass forms the barest suggestion of features, a shifting, lumpen mass of ever-moving tendrils coming from what used to be the kid's neck. The sound spreads more. Cracks in the floorboards and walls begin to show hints of the tendrils filling them in like spray foam. No one is hearing my screams, or if they are, they have no interest in helping. Ever wonder how you'd handle torture? I think if you're the kind of person to be reading this, it's likely you have. I started by pissing myself. The second the thin tendril touches my hand, I feel a blinding, flensing pain. I can do nothing but watch, as thousands of nearly hair-thin spines tear and consume my flesh. As it slowly, almost curiously makes its way up my arm, it leaves a bloodless, scarred furrow about 1/8 of an inch deep. My second reaction was to lose any pretense at defiance or dignity. I thrash and scream, beg and offer. All of this turning into choked sobs as the thing starts to do much of the same with another tendril. It felt like I was in hell. Every inch of me nothing more than a canvas for this artist of misery. But pain, it can only go so far. Whether we're talking about my tolerance or this thing's interest. Mutilation, the brutal wedding of pain and loss. That was its next step. A thick, almost centipede-like tendril sits on my pinky like a hot iron. I can only watch in horror as I see fat, then muscle, then bone, then nothing. My voice shreds. I tear my wrists and ankles trying desperately to break the expertly tied wires. My mind is at the breaking point. The creature in front of me makes a terrible, high-pitched keening I assume is laughter. My body is a roadmap of scarred pits and lines. My hand sports a cleanly severed finger. Fuck me, I wish things ended there. Of all the important parts of the human body, the eye tends to feel the least pain. Which isn't to say, as I watched the greedy, grasping claws slowly take pieces of one of mine, it didn't hurt, but the worst part was knowing what was happening. The vision in my left eye begins to distort at first, the edges getting blurry, then going dark. by bit, chunk by irreplaceable chunk, the creature takes half my vision. I can feel the shifting air on the bare socket. To call what I'm doing screaming would be understating things to the point of absurdity. My brain reels at what has just happened. I can feel my grip on reality begin to loosen, pain, worse than can bear, loss of half my sight. It's too much. My brain feels filled with static. For a few brief moments, I swear, I can hear someone, a voice trying to tell me something. But then, a smell hits me. Something so foul, so alien. It yanks me back from the brink of disassociation. I gag and choke as the air becomes thick with the rotten chemical reek. Then I see him. As randomly as he disappeared, in an instant trenchcoat is in the room. He's torn apart, wounds so deep and ragged. I can see the door on the other side of the room through the worst of them. One arm is a twisted, broken mess, the flesh jacket torn to shreds of necrotic tissue. The look on his face is panic, paranoia, a rictus grin of someone that has been kept on his toes for entirely too long. He trembles and heaves, looking like he could fall over at any second. He points his good arm at the tendril creature, who I notice has a too familiar eye suspended in its shifting features. You wouldn't happen to know anything about the motherfucker who just made me kill my favorite cousin, would you? Trenchcoat asks, his voice cracked and strained. He gets a confused keening in response. Bad day for you then, Augustus says. There is no style to his violence. Trenchcoat grabs the shifting mass, his wicked, claw-tipped fingers angling themselves in tendrils. As he lifts the thing, floorboards break, and it's torn free from the root-like system it was creating in the room. 3 brutal slams cover me in ichor and pieces of creature. Trenchcoat tosses the mewling, twitching pile in a corner and looks at me with disgust. You let that thing do this to you? Fucking pathetic, bud. And who tied you up? The nightmare I've been cursed with chides me. The kid's downstairs. I say, only now realizing I've still been sobbing. One-handed, Trenchcoat snaps the wires, then stumbles backward, slowly sliding down the wall. He coughs, gray, bloody phlegm hitting the ground. So what's the play here? If the shit broke you, I could use the spare parts. If not, well, you know what the Bible says. An eye for an eye. Trenchcoat grins as he talks, nearly on the brink of death. And that's where I think I'm going to leave things. Because, honestly, I don't know what I'm choosing. I'm mutilated, half-blind, using too much of my energy typing to strangers online about things because I'm so fucking alone here. If you hear from me again, I hope I made the right move. If not, take this as a lesson on what happens when you screw around with the occult.